With hospitality, the key aspect that we're learning, and it's very much a journey of exploration, but is crossing those boundaries that are very much written into a sort of etiquette or cultural norms that prevent people from finding each other and growing and nurturing community together. And of course the obvious boundary is the threshold of a person's home. So in that sense, whilst we might offer money to the stranger on the street who's selling the big issue, or we might offer some of our time to go and work at a youth centre with an Afghani teenager who's a refugee seeking asylum in our country, there is a very powerful dynamic that takes place when you actually invite them to cross the threshold of your home, and I think vice versa. One example of that would be a Romani gypsy family who initially we befriended as the husband was selling the big issue in our neighbourhood. And as we invited them to come and eat with us, they came to a number of parties that we were hosting. We got to know them and we got to know their story. The reciprocal nature of that is he then invited us to come to his home, which was of course a very different environment to certainly my white middle class background. What was so fascinating was how they reciprocated that welcome, that hospitality, and we're growing a relationship that has enough equity in it, shall we say, that we have trust to grow where that relationship might go spiritually.
We experienced incredible generosity, really, and the kindness of strangers was something we really experienced. When we first moved to our home in Ratnabad after about a year of being in Pakistan, our first 4 meals were provided for us by our very, very poor neighbours, and that was a very humbling experience, really.
I think eating together and hospitality is important because it's an allegory for something else. In other words, in the same way that we understand the bread and the wine sacramentally, and that they create that opportunity for a transcendent encounter, food to us is a spiritual act by way of sharing and receiving that can create that encounter, that place where God is among us.
I find I work in countries where it would be incredibly rude to eat in front of somebody else and not share, so I get used to breaking a muesli bar off on a train or a bus and giving half to my neighbour here. I get used to sharing my cupboards with my housemates now because it is just a different experience. I find as well the ministries I'm called towards. I had 2 friends at church a couple of years ago, one who was a man off the street, a homeless man off the street from Portugal, and one Muslim woman from Iran. And I realised as it was coming up to Christmas, we had opened our church to them, we'd shared our faith, they were believers. However, no one took any interest in what they were going to do for Christmas, and I realised they neither had anywhere to go. So I invited them to my house. Quickly, they brought friends, which is what they would do, and word got round. As one single vegetarian, I realised that my table wasn't going to be big enough. It got to 10, then I talked to church and said, I feel there's something bigger happening here. We got a small meeting hall given to us, and then up it went to 20 or 30 or 40. And I realised there are so many lonely people in our churches, the widow, the orphan, the new person coming in from overseas, the woman who's got a brother out of a long-term learning disabled home just for Christmas Day. They all wanted somewhere to come and stay. So it ended up as 88 people on Christmas Day. We got Father Christmas along, we made them all their own gift, and it was old-fashioned British values of hospitality. I would like our society to get back to those values whilst integrating the multicultural values of others, because what we have now is we have pockets of culture that don't mix, and actually we can all learn from each other by sharing what we have.
Somehow we've got caught up in quite an industrial way of thinking about mission and faith. And so we're very programmatic often in the way we go about it. But if that's the only way in which we exist or get up and live our life out, we have no room for that holy interruption. One of the questions that we ask of each other in a community is, when we get up at the beginning of the week and we look at our week, how much of it is already predetermined, so we actually know what we're going to do before we do it, and how much within that, therefore, are we prepared for that to be interrupted. And I think that the sort of normative dominant culture of today is a very full life. We're encouraged to live these full lives, but actually that can be subtly deceptive if it robs us as the people of God from a theology that still believes God exists among us, and there will always be these moments, should we see them, where we can interact with something He's doing, where we can respond to what is in front of us. In the end, if you can embrace someone who's entirely different to you, who might stink, who might smell of something that is an aversion to you, who might dress differently, who might speak differently, who might be from a completely different social or economic background, that is the threshold that we must cross first.